So that's the only other one I think I'll mention here is rollups. There's a lot of interesting work going on right now on Bitcoin rollups. What I mean by a rollup is a ZK rollup, a zero knowledge rollup. There's a sovereign rollup and there's a zero knowledge rollup, and technically optimistic rollup is in there as well. And the difference is sovereign rollups are user verified rollups, whereas ZK rollups are layer one verified rollups. And so a ZK rollup, for example, on Ethereum might be something like ZK Sync, where you actually take a proof and you take the inputs and you store that on Ethereum, and Ethereum itself can verify the proof. On Bitcoin, Bitcoin currently can't verify zero knowledge proofs. We don't have the capability in Bitcoin script to do that at the very moment. There are lots of ways to potentially do it. One is with an opcode upgrade. You could imagine some kind of like ZK Stark verify opcode of sorts that could verify. You could also imagine maybe we get covenants, that's BIP 119, CTV, check template verify. And if we got that, there might be some way to do something like a BitVM plus CTV ZK verifier of sorts that could work. And then maybe there's a way in BitVM itself, like let's say they overcome all the limitations and create some breakthrough and create this amazing thing. Like you could theoretically use BitVM as a ZK verifier. You could implement a ZK verifier in BitVM. So I know probably 6 to 10 teams currently working on sovereign rollups on Bitcoin right now. Taking other ZK stacks and bringing them to Bitcoin, using Bitcoin as a full data availability layer, and then using essentially a light client. All users run a light client in their browser, and then they can verify all of the transactions that have been stored on Bitcoin. And by doing this, you essentially get, it's not a true layer two in the sense of like trustless bridging and trustless transactions. You get trustless transactions, but you don't get trustless bridging unless we get some kind of opcode to solve for this. So sovereign rollups are fantastic, but are kind of like side chains in that you have to bridge assets right now using some kind of trusted setup. So yeah, that's kind of the landscape on Bitcoin right now in, you know, a relatively concise, although not that concise, 10-minute breakdown. At this point, you know, I'm happy to dive in anywhere. If you want to talk about something that's not on here, if you want to talk about how something fits into the Bitcoin layers landscape, if you want to talk about the fungible token layer, if you want to talk about meta protocols, or you want to talk about decentralizing indexers on meta protocols, or sovereign rollups, or ZK rollups, I'm going to stop screen sharing for a minute and we can just do some Q&A.
I had a question there, Bob. So I really like the sort of comparison between sovereign and ZK rollups. What are some benefits to sovereign rollups as it pertains to like ordinals, trading like native assets like inscriptions, BRC20, stuff like that, and then comparing sovereign versus like ZK rollups?
Yeah, that's a great question. The sovereign rollups, the benefit that sovereign rollups have over meta protocols is you do get some throughput and cost benefits. So batching transactions by itself gives you about a 10x improvement in cost and throughput, because every Bitcoin transaction has a little bit of overhead associated with it because you have addresses and you have signatures. If you can batch all of those transactions together, you get about a 10x improvement. So costs would drop. Essentially, you would interact on this layer two. You would be able to do all of the same kinds of things. And then those transactions would all be kind of packaged together by a sequencer and then shipped off to a prover who would then sign or generate the proof and then store all of that on Bitcoin. But storing it on Bitcoin would be cheaper. And then you would pay the gas fees or network fees in the Bitcoin case on the layer two. But it would be a lot cheaper, you know, probably 10x-ish cheaper. The other benefit is as a as a sovereign rollup, you can more efficiently encode data. So rather than using like a JSON and text, you could use like CBOR or something like that, because all you need to be able to do is know how it's encoded and know how to decode. So you could use probably more efficient data structures maybe you get another 2x improvement there. So my current assumption is sovereign rollups will give you a 20x benefit in terms of cost reduction and in terms of increased throughput. So that's one benefit for sovereign rollups over meta protocols. Thinking specifically of like BRC20 transactions, it's really easy to imagine taking something like that over to a sovereign rollup on Bitcoin instead, because it's just so much cheaper. Like, do 20 transactions for the cost of one feels pretty good.
Something about appreciate it.
Michael.
I had Bob, thanks. The question on, could you elaborate a bit further on the potential and the benefits of DLCs?
Yes. Yeah, so DLCs, if you remember on that diagram, the DLCs were kind of straddling the side chain and the like core Bitcoin. That's because generally the way that you construct DLCs is you use Bitcoin script, and then you have some kind of third-party centralized oracle that needs to then provide, it's basically a private key in order to access the Bitcoin that's been locked up in a Bitcoin script. And so oracles are kind of, or sorry, DLCs are kind of straddling that line, as you do rely on some external system in order for the unlock. But then under the hood, it's basically all just Bitcoin script. And so it's kind of like, it's not a side chain. A side chain, you're like fully trusting the side chain. You have to bridge all of your assets over, and you have some kind of multi-sig or threshold setup for the Bitcoin bridge. DLCs feel more native to Bitcoin because you're locking them up inside of, it's just Bitcoin. You're just locking it up inside Bitcoin itself. And the key, yes, it's held by some trusted third party, but that's a lot. If you trust that third party, then you have a pretty good close to Bitcoin setup. There are also ways to think about decentralizing that third party oracle. And if you decentralized it, then that even kind of upgrades your security. There are some ways that people are thinking about decentralizing that oracle and entity. So DLCs are a cool